Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions. We welcome back to the show Sim. Obviously, Sim does the main image monthly, what we do with the team. However, today we're going to bring him back to do part 2 of the in-depth. If you've not seen it, go back through the catalogue, sellersessions.com. He did it last time with his partner Jack, but there was a lot of stuff that we weren't able to cover, obviously, because there's 2 of the guys on there, and so we're going to chart Sim's path. We're going to do a little roundup of that pod just quickly, so give you the highlights. You can obviously watch the full episode again on YouTube as well. But Sim, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me back, Danny. Part 2.
Part 2. Well, there is a lot to cover. As you said, there's stuff missing. So we'll just recap quickly. Quick highlights. You started, took over from your dad in 15, 14, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was 17. So, yeah, I'll give the
17.
quick synopsis. Went to uni, came out of there, was gambling for a living for a long time. So it was poker first, then sports betting. And then around 2017, sports betting was definitely dwindling down. Like my edge was definitely evaporating. And I either had to put a lot more work in or get better. I mean, I had the same thing with poker, a few years previous, and both times just decided to move on to something else. So this time it was to my dad's business. It was with good knowledge that it would be a long-term thing for me and that I was sort of going to be all in on the project. But I definitely started off slowly and my stripes, I guess, and then sort of more formally took over once Jack joined a year later, and then we pressed on. Anyone that wants to hear like the full business story, obviously it was in the previous pod where Jack and I both talk about it. But there was a lot of various things that we did with Amazon. Vendor exclusives was the biggest part of our journey, but also the biggest mistake I think that we made, and we're still sort of feeling the effects of that in the company now, and now trying to get out of that and think bigger.
So let's, if you don't mind, can we dip into the gambling side of things? It's interesting because Ash Thompson, another big UK Amazon seller, he's sold now, but he did had a background in poker. But when you're talking about, the sports betting, the poker and stuff, was it more like an addiction that was going the wrong way, or you like excelled it and it wasn't that the house won all the time? You were good at what you were doing.
Yeah, so poker is obviously the unique casino game, if you like, where you're only playing against the players opposite you, and the house just takes their cut, right? So online, the speed of play is a lot faster, and back in the heyday, like 2009, I want to say was probably the heyday for online poker, maybe a bit earlier. It was good money back then, and anyone with an IQ and the drive to do it could probably have succeeded. And then it got progressively harder from there as a lot more training came out, and there were multiple training sites that arguably ruined it. But that's how I really excelled and got better, was being one of the first on those, and really diving into what makes a winning player. And so I had a really good run. So I think at university, my last year, I didn't go to a single lecture. I was playing poker the entire time. Still got a 2-2. I was pretty close to a 2-1, which shows how a degree, like, is it actually worth anything if you can just blag it, I guess. But so the second year of uni, I played every single day near enough. I wasn't really focused on the work at all. I think I made £180 in the entire time. I was playing such small stakes. And in the second year, I think I made, I don't know, maybe mid 30s, like 30 odd grand or something like that. But back then when you're 21, that is a lot of money. And then from then on, it was pushing 6 figures every year consistently. But I think looking back on all of this now, I was definitely thinking small, as crazy as that sounds. Ash Thompson, for example, I'm relatively good friends with him now. He obviously didn't think small, and he played big stakes, big money. He really pushed his edges, and then did exactly the same in his business life as well. So I think my recurring theme, looking back on my sort of journey in the last, say, what would it be, 18, 20 years, whatever, I've perhaps thought too small throughout. And then
Mm.
it's sort of as you meet better people, as you extend your network, you really realize what you could have done. And that's
Mm.
so I've got a slight regret, even though, I'm sitting here with a business that's doing pretty well, but it's there is definitely regret along the way for me.
Yeah. So you had the correlation of like the gambling gave you the edge, and obviously the taste for risk, although calculated, like saying now. But where did the switch come? Because you said you were playing small, but then you're saying that the latter years you were doing six figures. And I'm talking it from a point of
Yeah,
view is that most people won't
yeah.
make a career out of it, and they lose their ass and their house a lot of the time. Do you see what I mean? So you must
Oh
have
yeah,
been
yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah, for sure. That I was like, if this is the case for any pro back then, if you knew what you knew now,
Mm,
even now where I've been out of the game for years, if I knew what I knew now back in 2007, you'd be the best player in the world. That's
mm,
no exaggeration. That's literally the case of how far the game's come. Online
mm.
poker is now solved, in my opinion. It's very hard to truly make money there. Like it's basically been game theoried out
Yeah.
into the abyss, really, and it's really is just live poker, and that really where some money can be made. Even then, I think it's tough. I think I saw the writing on the wall coming, and I knew that my edge was going, and the standard was getting higher, and so I had to either make a decision to get better, really dig in, get coaching for the very best, and I just didn't really feel like I had that fight left in me. I'd been to put it into context, so to make the amount of money that I did with no relatively little risk, I was playing lower stakes, but an insane amount of hours and a lot of tables. So online, my online screen would have been eight tables of cash poker, and then like one table of, say, I don't know what it had been back then, Prison Break or Lost, that would sit in the middle,
Yeah.
and I would just completely zone out. What do they call it when you zone out?
You go into the
Focus.
zone. Yeah.
Yeah, what is it though? That deep focus mode. I forget it now.
Mm,
And I was in that for my entire 20s. That's what it felt like.
mm,
Fully zoned out and fully into it. And yeah, I ended up like being pretty reclused. I think I made up for that in my 30s for sure. But there was definite work ethic there. Whether that was a misplaced gambling addiction or work ethic, I haven't quite figured out just yet. But um, it was a very smooth journey for me, really. The gambling, it's as well the poker in particular,
mm,
because the way I played, the stakes I played, there was never really huge risk to what I was doing. It was a very steady line going. X equal Y graph, basically going up to the top right. And it was a pretty smooth journey for me. It was only towards the end where, that say 100 grand a year started to drop down to 50, 40. And then my lifestyle back then was pretty extravagant in terms of holidays, and my wife like wouldn't have been working at that point either. So yeah, that's when the change to sports betting came. And
mm,
then it all started up again. So sports betting was a whole other thing where there was an edge. I had a palpable edge with cricket, especially test matches where it's a long, complicated game, and got into the right groups where people sort of taught me the basics. So here's how you can trade a match, much like a stock market. You can
mm,
buy high, sell low, this kind of thing. And but the variance in that was extremely high. Like I would have days of five-figure losses a couple of times. I'd never had that really in my poker days. So much swingier, much more um, stress, I guess.
mm,
It was a lot more outside of your control. So you could place a bet, and then the player loses his rag, or plays a bad shot, or the quarterback
mm,
goes down, whatever it might be, whatever sport it was, and think that there's a lot more outside of your control, and the edges were smaller, but
mm,
but yeah, I just adapted over time. In that time, I had a really good run, and it was,
mm.
looking back, it was good fun. If I was a bit shut off from the rest of the world, headphones on, staring at a screen for most of my 20s, and I was pretty overweight at one point as well. So, um, and then yeah, so around 2016 is when I stopped properly, and that was also the time when my wife was pregnant with our twins, and that's when I had a feeling this is not sustainable. Either
Mm,
the edge might go, or I'm going to struggle with this mentally, and I don't want to be working through the night. You know, like Australian cricket's
mm.
through the night. I can't be doing that. NFL can be through the night. So yeah, that's when I transitioned to the business. And honestly, best thing I did. I wish I did it 5 years sooner. Oh, if I did it 5 years sooner, I think this is a very different conversation of where I'd be. But yeah,
But you know
no
what?
regrets from that point.
It can all be extrapolated. You just said an edge. You need an edge on Amazon. You're talking about the moving parts of everything. Just think about what you do. You're an 8-figure seller. You've edged your bets. When you're scaling, you can break a lot of things on the way. There's, again, a lot of moving parts. There is some luck in there as well in some of the aspects of timing, yeah? If you look at ranking, how that's changed over time. So everything you spoke about there is like you extrapolated that from poker into Amazon. Does that make sense? Like it's fast
Yeah,
moving, ranking changes. There's little that you can control in that sense. Yes, you can control your stock and your inventory, but there's so many things that are out of your hand, and there's so many requirements that you have to overcome in terms of increasing fees and having the edge of going, yeah, I'm going to go and be competitive against these people. Yeah, I can do this. And all of that edge that you had from poker, you know, like you kept saying your edge is going down. Well, your edge is still up in Amazon because other people's edges are either going down or on the way up because it's a tough business to do. So I
yeah,
think
absolutely.
listening to you is like you could extrapolate everything across to Amazon, which probably explains why where you are. I know that you got the business from your dad and it was an ongoing concern, but it was you and Jack and the team that took it to this next level.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's fair. The we treat it as a game.
Hmm.
Because it is like you are in competition with your competitors,
Hmm.
and you know there are various ways you have to compete. You have to have a better product. You have to source it better than they do. You have to have better imagery than they do. Whatever it might be, but it is a game.
Hmm.
And yeah, like I said on the previous pod as well, we've you know two of our most senior employees are former gamblers as well. So Chris is our head of supply chain. He's the one that actually introduced me to sports betting. He just saw me tweeting about some random cricket bet I was doing and said, "Oh, you should talk to these guys." And you know, and then that whole snowball of us talking then led to him living nearby and then joining the company. And then yeah, I head of sales Adam. He's also a former professional gambler, and we all treat it the same way. All just treat
Hmm.
it as a game that we've got to beat. What's our edge? Is it big enough to push? Let's push, and we do that every time. I think that's really kept the motivation of the business going. Jack's naturally motivated anyway, but the other three of us, that's I think that's how we kept it going. We
Yeah.
treat it as a game.
Yeah. So what other stuff did we did not get to cover in the last pod? I know you mentioned some bits earlier on that we could go
Yeah,
into.
well, it was a whole other sort of period as well. So there was a lot of Bitcoin stuff I used to do. So I used to arb them, right? So I used to like buy them on, I think the site was called Bitstamp, sell them on local Bitcoins. And we were making, this was actually with Chris as well. I think we were making a grand a day for about, I don't know, 3 months. It was crazy money back then. But I think at one point I might have owned 36 of them. And then I sold them. This is how long ago this was. I sold them at £500, all of them. And then the next, I think 2 weeks later, they were £300. Thought I was a genius. Didn't think much of it. And then, yeah, I actually went back and found that old transaction of me selling 36 Bitcoin the other day. So
Wow.
devastation. So yeah, but I've definitely seen 18. I'm pretty sure there was another account with the other 18 in. But yeah,
Hmm.
so some funny stories there. But yeah, the rest is now the business
Hmm.
and how we, you know, I came in not knowing anything about business. I knew about dad's business. Like, you know, I helped put some stuff on Amazon and eBay in the early days. And um, I didn't know, as I walked in, we were running a warehouse. There was staff. I had no
Hmm.
idea about anything, the HR, why we even had this warehouse in the first place. It was only until about 2 years in that I realized that no one has a warehouse. They all just FBA everything. and they got a lovely chilled business. Well, we've got, headcount of 10 people and trying to keep them busy, and had no idea about trying to keep them efficient. It was honestly laughable how poor I was in certain areas. And then Jack came in and with a much more corporate background and took a lot of that stress and headache away. And because he knew what a real business looks like. So, and then we just grew from there. Really, I focus on all the Amazon stuff, the technical stuff. That's still probably my strength now. Myself and Adam sort of run that side of the business, and pretty much self-taught from YouTube, really, and then a few courses later down the line.
So what was the point with, should we go back into like the business itself and talk about some of the key points of scaling? I know that you worked with Yoni for a period. You met him at Seller Sessions, I think, a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
what was
right.
that like? Because that opened your eyes in terms of building out the systems.
We just didn't know what we didn't know, and we didn't know what even our small team would be capable of if we were to sort of systemize and do things differently. Like we're still far from perfect now. There's still loads of stuff we need to improve, but there are things in place now that help us scale. Yoni and his team at Scala a massive part in helping us get things together. And yeah, honestly, that was a very intense process that, by the end of it, we were sort of sat around looking at old clips of the first interviews that we did with the Scala. It was like a 9-month process. And we're looking back at the first clips and then where we were at now. And it's just pretty emotional to go back and see it, because it was such a transformative thing that we went through. And now like we just booked in a meeting today to discuss the org chart next week. So it's still imperfect, but there's a proper journey that we went on there that helped us get to a point where Jack and I were separated in the org chart, and then we could then focus properly on what we had to and put the right people in the right spots.
Yeah. So look, when people talk about scales, it's like, okay, you're going to scale SOPs. It's not like that though. It looks on the outside, oh yeah, just get some SOPs, we'll just scale, right? We'll just put our processes in place.
SOPs is 0% of our business. We don't really run the business like that at all. We've just got people that have been in the role for a long time and know what they're doing, and then trust them to do that. SOPs only come out to teach someone completely new, like a brand manager, maybe like a new brand manager. Here's how we do things. But again, that tends to be fairly unstructured, because we want them to do it themselves, test it, learn it, and figure it out. It's going to become very obvious soon if they don't understand what it is that's being asked of them. Like the results won't be there, and we'll see that. But we don't really have structured SOPs. We'd much rather have structured roles and responsibilities, and then let people sink or swim, basically. And most of the time, luckily for us, they swim.
Yeah. And how do you break that down? Because obviously they came in, you didn't know what you didn't know. What was it that you didn't know that you now know today that helped you? Do you understand what I mean? It's like there was gaps. Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, I was heavily involved in the day-to-day of everything. So logistics, sourcing, research, optimization. There was not one facet of the business that I wasn't involved in, even like the warehouse, stuff like that. And then it took a relatively junior person at a Scala to almost laugh at me and what I was doing. And so, this is ridiculous. What on earth was I thinking? Why am I wasting my time with this? Why was I not focused more on this? And then that's when the penny dropped, and I realized that there's a whole other way of doing this, and it's not just all reliant on me. It's not all reliant on Jack. It's not all reliant on, say, Adam and Chris. It's a full readjustment, an adjustment that we need to restructure this. And then that was the biggest thing. But not everyone, and that's going to be a similar story for most. Okay, technically I'm not a founder, but for most founders, right? It's going to be, you're used to doing everything, and then you have to start systemizing that and delegating. It goes through the stages of what a 0 to 1 looks like, a 1 to 5 looks like, and then upwards. And we were following that exact thing. Every single problem that they said in the book, we found we had that problem, and we found every single time. It's almost laughable. So Yeah, but for us, I mean, to be honest, I'm still too much in my day to day. But I think that's partially because I'm a little bit addicted to chaos.
Yeah.
We had an assistant, Jack and I share an assistant, and a few months ago she asked me like, "Do you think you're a bit addicted to chaos?" I said, I really do think that is the case because
Yeah.
as soon as it gets quiet, we'll start another project or another brand up or something and try and push something. But
So what do you do now that is limited that distraction so that you can be good at your role as well?
yeah, so this is where a Scala really helped, and there's like a more of a strategic change that we're making this year that I'll
Mm.
talk about. But a Scala basically went right. You're not going to be doing this, this, and this. We're going to split the org chart up. Like for now, I have no idea what happens in logistics. All I know is that the
Mm.
goods turn up, and we check the ClickUp board, and it comes on a certain date. Cool, right?
Mm.
I have no idea what the container rates. I frankly don't care. It's not something I have to deal with. It's not something I need to know. Um, and listing optimization, stuff like this. We have a lot of listings. The way the business was built throughout, we ended up with a very wide range of products that we're now trying to refine, and that was hard to manage. And we couldn't just discontinue them all at the same time because you'd lose half the business. Now it's a bit different, but so we brought into Amazon listing specialists. They were trained up on how to essentially data dive the listings. Obviously, all this is changing
Mm.
now, but and they would go away and do that. So I didn't have to do any listing optimizations. They were much better at flat files than I ever was. Didn't have to worry about that. If we saw a variation split, the colors have gone off on different,
Mm.
listings. You just message them, they sort it out. So that was these little things started to matter and started to pick up, and I started to get a bit more time back. Right now, I'm still getting pulled around in too many things, but way, way, way fewer than before. And
Mm.
obviously, we just hired more people, right? So we've got, I don't know, 30 people now, albeit we do run a warehouse, but that does inherently mean there's more people to delegate things to and more responsibilities to offload. Yeah, the strategic thing that we're now looking at. So obviously, we've got to 10 million. Well, I don't know what we'll do this year, maybe 11 or 12, but what we're doing now is trying to refine the catalog that we've got. So we have, instead of going wider and trying to bit part a load of different products, it's just now a proper hone in. What's the big opportunities? Where can we really push our weight around and focusing on those so that we can do everything in an ultra optimized way, fully focused, and properly dive deep on the bigger opportunities. It's the same amount of work basically. Like you still got to do an imagery set. You still have to do all the same polling. You're still going to have to do the listing optimization, the sourcing, the research. Everything's the same. It's just the scope of the project is the upside is so much higher. And we're pretty good now at mitigating failures. Like it's rare really that we're going to have a launch that completely miffs or we lose money on. We can tend to get out of it in one piece, especially here in the UK. But the
Because
upsides are
your
just so high.
focus is only UK or you do Europe as well. I know you don't do US.
Yeah, so part of trying to refine what we do was focus on what we do well, which is the UK. So the reason that is that because we run our own warehouse, we have seller fulfilled prime, and
Mm.
we've been told we're one of the biggest seller fulfilled prime users. We send, I don't know, I think it's 1,500, 2,000 parcels out a day from our warehouse, and then we've been relatively smart in then at 3 o'clock when the customer stops getting shown a 1 day delivery time, we then use an API repricer, get the FBA price down, and then FBA takes over during the evening. So the customer always gets shown 1 day, but we're able to optimize margin that way. But for a non 3PL, I think we're must be one of the bigger SFP sellers in the country. And that does give us a huge edge. Like, for example, I mean, someone ordered 20 products from us earlier. That's one fulfillment fee we've got to pay rather than 20.
Yeah.
So just little things like that. And then, say, for example, in certain parcel rates in the UK, it could be 5.65 for an FBA fee, and you've got to get it to FBA. Here, we pay £3.15 for the same thing, or £3.10. I forget what it is exactly. So huge edges there in terms of fulfillment. And that's why we sort of have said like UK is our biggest edge. Let's focus there. And then now we're going to,
Yeah.
and then when it's right, we then push to Germany and the US.
But what is the end goal, right? So you're at 11 million. You could go, what do you want? 100, 200? And why do you want it? Do you see what I mean? It's like, do you want it for the sake of it? Or is there something behind it? And will you cap out and go, do you know what, 15 mil UK, I've won, I've got the edge, all good?
Yeah, I mean, so at this point, with a warehouse our size, there's our overheads are massively significant. Like most sellers aren't paying anywhere near what we are in overheads because they don't have to. They don't have a 31 man headcount. Now, we know sellers
Mm.
that do more than us with, I'm not joking, 3 people, because there's the opportunities that are in enormous, and they can run it with a small team and an agency of designers or whatever. Um, to make big money, we
Mm.
have to hit the high numbers, and we think with pretty much the same team, we can go from 11 to 22. And probably I only had 2 or 3 people. I genuinely think that's realistic.
Yeah. So just to recap that, you got 31. So
Yeah, it was 31. We had to let a few go, but it's the high
you
20s
got,
if
yeah. So you got high 20s, and there's some people doing with 3 or 4 people, but they don't have their warehouse. So is there enough of an edge in there? So your edge is because you got the warehouse, and then you're paying one fee, you got seller fulfilled prime. But then once you add the capital cost of staff,
we're working on figuring it out. Actually, is this warehouse, if it was a standalone business, is it worth us owning?
yeah,
And if not, at what point will it be? And so, yeah, that's a calculation that Jack's been working on, and we should have soon. But in my opinion, it's definitely above break even. Now you got to factor in
mm,
all the hassle, all the extenuating stuff you've got to deal with, rates, rent,
mm,
charges, the roofs leaking, all this stuff, all the HR nonsense that comes along with this. And this is the point. If we double the size of the business, we don't double the efforts. We 1.1 times the effort, right? So
yeah, yeah,
there's a real scale now.
mm,
So this is like we are where we're at. It all sounds great, but really we're not happy until it has to double probably for us to really make good money.
yeah.
And really push the envelope. And we're very confident in the team and the fact that we think we can do this.
So there's two parts to it. It's the output that can be achieved on a 24-hour spectrum, right? 7 days a week. So it's not just the staff, it's what can pass through. And then obviously the size of the warehouse will play a role. You want more volume out, that means more stock in, a speed of stock going out, not scaling up as many people. That at some point it caps out unless you move to a larger building and get more.
Yep.
So that's what I'm saying is like there's a few elements in there as well, isn't it? Even if you can scale it, do you have the capacity, i.e. the square footage, to do that as well to get where you need to go?
Yeah, well, I would turn my camera around to show you opposite us here, but I'm sat in a warehouse here and we just bought one over the road. So that's part of the,
Right.
family pension
Mm,
sort of thing. So that's going to work out fine as a investment asset anyway. So we're good from that regard. But we have to consider things like ROI, obviously, but ROI per cubic meter as well for a product. We
yeah,
have to factor that in because there's a massive opportunity cost in things sat here lingering around, taking up space that we could use.
yeah,
And that's again like why I want to really scale down the amount of products that we have.
mm,
I did a very, very basic analysis of our, top 100 parents, and I mean Pareto absolutely bang on. It was like 79%
yeah,
of the profit came from the top 21 products. So yeah, unbelievably close. And then you
yeah,
realize that the amount of effort these little hangers on at the bottom take is just simply not worth it. So now all our focus is at the top, and
mm,
the bottom ones slowly, with all the effort on the bottom ones now are going to be to discontinue them. We're going to clear
yeah,
them and then done. We're finished. And we also worked out that the top one products covered the bottom 40. So
mm,
if we just got rid of the bottom 40, put all that cash flow, all that effort, and just try to get another one back on top, which shouldn't be impossible, or even two that make it up, then we've got a much simplified business.
yeah.
And that's
And I
our main
suppose,
focus.
the products you're going to go after, because if you think, say, US is 3.5 times the size of the UK, like on a product basis, that sells X there. In the US, it sells 3 and X up. There's the element of going for much more competition, high competition products as well in the UK to get the volume and the velocity. True? So the
Yep.
way that you
Yeah,
look
yeah.
at products, you can go instead of, in the US, people dive into the top 1,000, right? You do that, you're going into shark water. But then you might go in the UK, we'll go top 100, top 150, top 200 to kind of placate that difference in sales volume because the UK's smaller. Is that
Yeah, that I mean
on
that's
the mark?
essentially why we have a wider catalog because each opportunity isn't that big.
Mm,
But there are a few that we're able to now. We've got a few tactics up our sleeve now to stay ranked on big keywords and stuff like this. Very aggressive deal strategy, stuff like that, where you still allow yourself a bit of margin. It's
mm,
been working really well for us. We're able to fight in 100, 200,000 search volume niches with very little PPC because we deal so aggressively and it does work out. So we think there's stuff that we can do that others aren't in terms of ranking and get sticking basically once you do get up
mm.
there. And then obviously all the other stuff, the main image optimization and stuff. Obviously that's a bit of a baby of mine now.
Yeah.
We're far from perfect, but when we do put the effort in, we tend
I've
to come
seen
out with
some of
something.
them. Like, I mean, we're talking Sistine Chapel, some of the stuff that Dorian's done for you, which you showed me,
Yeah, yeah,
incredible.
yeah, yeah.
Like the depth of the images, everything that he does, how he creates depth in an image is incredible.
Yeah. So
It's an art form now.
yeah, and I just think we've got real big economies of scale, and this is not to disincentivize like smaller sellers, but when you do have, say, a large design team that can constantly iterate and try things out, and you do have people solely focused on one thing and one thing only, it does give you potential edges going forward. And as long as our team is focused on a few, you know, a few things rather than spread out like we have been the entire history of the business, then I think we can then scale
Yeah.
without losing all our hair.
So where do you get your Pareto's law in terms of launching? There's going to be 20% of the work that you do in the launch outside of the product itself, because obviously that's got to be right. It doesn't matter what you do after. If you've got shit products, you're just going to prop up rank. But putting that aside, you've got a great product on the back end in terms of the launch. What brings you the best yield of your time? Because a lot of people will say, "Oh, running ads or whatever," but I'm imagining for you, it's almost all about image and deals.
Yeah. Image deals, just creative pricing in general, especially in the early
Mm.
days. And yeah, if we launch a new product now, the imagery is going to be absolutely bang on. Obviously, we
Yeah,
still got to tweak some of the older ones, but the main image in particular, we're pretty confident with things going forward,
yeah,
especially on new projects. That's where I think the time. I mean, look, it's sourcing quality control, and we have had some major issues with that recently, where a supplier has really stiffed us. But sourcing a good price, good quality products, imagery, those three can run this show.
yeah,
If you're doing that, it's quite hard to fail, genuinely.
mm,
So that's where our focus is right now, because we found the hard way that if we don't source right, the margin's not there. We found the hard way that if the quality control is wrong, we reviews, they're literally dealing with a shipment outside now where a supplier we know shipped a bad shipment because we had to forego the inspection to get it out before a certain time, and that will hurt us.
mm,
We now know, say, sourcing, QC, and imagery. Get those three right, you're off. But then
yeah,
the new thing now, obviously, is how you're going to then drive traffic to the listing. So that's where deals is probably the easiest way.
yeah,
Um, but obviously, we've now systemized it, so it's like we're hitting it at the right times. We're gaming the price basically as much as we
hmm,
can, and then I'm taking no credit for this, by the way. This is all the team. This is nothing to do with me.
mm,
And yeah, obviously TikTok has been pretty good for us and a few brands. Just relatively free traffic, albeit we've sent out about 2,000 samples, I think, for one of our brands. But all that affiliate traffic makes a big difference over time.
yeah. Who, do you mind saying who you're using? Do you use third party for your affiliate traffic? Is there anyone specific that you're using?
Well, we used to use. So I don't know what the best tactic is right now, but for
Yeah,
for one brand, we used an outreach bot that I forget the name even, but it just contacted everyone, and then basically everyone started using these bots, and now the creators are just getting flooded. But where we did
Yeah.
it in the UK, there probably wasn't that much spamming going on, so we were getting through, and then basically we just said to everyone, anyone that had a creator account basically could get a sample from us. We weren't picky. We just wanted to completely flood the market and see what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And yeah, it went pretty well for us. I think we got quite lucky in that a few what I would describe as bizarrely poor videos just went nuts. You know, millions of one had a million views, 500,000 on another, drove a load of traffic, and then obviously then you get the whole velocity of sales on TikTok Shop. They start promoting it around and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then we've got a few niche influencers now that have big followings that help us out. So I think just putting yourself out there on TikTok Shop is just a no-brainer. But again, having our own warehouse, we were able to send those samples out so cheaply. It was costing us like £4 a video. Like
Hmm.
it just didn't matter. We just wanted to scale this thing. So
Yeah.
yeah.
What about optimizing, say, like main images, right? Let's say your top performing products, right? Because there's one argument you'd leave them alone to a certain degree, but there's a reverse trick because normally you optimize to get better. But if you're already top of market in winning, but you got people chomping away at the heels, how do you tackle that? Are you constantly doing the main image of the best selling product to see if you can squeeze a bit more juice from it?
We used to be very careful. So we had there's a product that we have. It's 16,000 reviews, something like that, and it's basically always done well. It's been number one ranked for every keyword it's got. Um, and I didn't really want to touch the main image. I just thought whatever this is, it's working.
Mm.
And then actually, this is one that Dorian's worked on. If you look at his portfolio, you might even see it on LinkedIn. But he then got a 20% increase in, might have been conversion. I don't think it
Mm.
was click through rate. I think it might have been conversion. And that's
I
it.
think
That
that's
thing
one of
is
his
now,
promises, isn't it? If he does your
yeah,
main
yeah,
image, he promises you a 20% increase on the current conversion rate.
yeah, that's right. But yeah, so that was one I didn't want to do. And when I first saw his design, I was very unsure, by the way.
Mm.
But he basically did a load of polling, came out with a hypothesis, and then nailed it first time. But that was a very nervy test for me because
Yeah, of
if
course.
it on the other way, that's a significant hit in sales. But obviously, again, it's a gamble, right? Now that it's improved it for sure, then we're just going to benefit from that going forward. So um, we still rank number one on everything, obviously, but we're just I think we're selling another 60, 70 units a day, maybe of that, which is nice. And then there are some other ones that we're quite scared to touch, but we're now starting to do it. We're polling them to some extent, but we tend to just go straight to manager experiments now. Like we're quite experienced in knowing what probably is going to work, so we tend to go
Mm.
straight to the experiment now. And we've got a few that come back in a few days actually that are quite going to be quite interesting to see. But there
How do
was
you manage? How you? I was going to say with the experiments because it's a piece of shit. Amazon experiments, right? In the real terms of split testing on your own website and the available tools, it's a black box, right? My biggest thing with that I've found is, let's say that you're running an experiment. Obviously, it's got signals weak, strong, and stuff like that. But you're waiting for statistical significance. So an argument could be, and I see this a lot at the agency as well. Clients will go, "I'm going to stop it, because they're watching the sales, right?" Which is, of course, you keep an eye on it. But then sometimes you forget the upturn, the shape of the market, how long it takes to get to reach statistical significance. How are you measuring in between when you're looking at it and when you pull back? I mean, I sent a bot to the group because I kind of solved the first part of the problem. But I really think his click-through rate is probably the best barometer when you're unsure about the experiments in the direction it's going, because that's going to give a clearer indicator. Or would you say there's more?
Yeah, no, click through rate. I think I think you're bang on there. We have an internal tool that we run that will track it over time for us.
Mm,
Again, I'm not taking any credit for this. This is just smart members of the team. But
mm,
yeah, so we see it move over time. The problem is obviously it's only been shown half the time, so it's not going to move as much as it perhaps is only
Mm.
going to move by half, right?
Mm.
So yeah, honestly, we just try and get very confident in the hypothesis and the final design, and this so that we're confident we can let the experiment run. If you put something up you're very unsure about, you're going to be wanting to take it down sooner.
You've
I
already
think we
put the
just got to let
mockers
it
on
run.
it, haven't you? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like if you're unsure and you're running it, you're going to cancel it anyway because you're already unsure. So you're better off waiting, because we discussed this before. There gets to a point when you do a shit ton of testing, you know instinctively when it's time to test. Whereas if you've
Yeah.
only just started out, you're always going to question. And if you have got that vibe, it's like, no, this is not going to do anything. As soon as you see anything within the data that looks slightly negative, you're just going to pull it anyway. So it's always best to wait until you're sure you're ready to go and you're confident with it, or it's just another week that's wasted.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know why they don't just provide daily data. Like
Yeah,
some products, some people that I know have ASINs that sell so many units, so much traffic. You could get significant data in a day. Like you could get
true.
definitely within a week, genuinely, because
Yeah.
the sample sizes are so big. Why have we got to wait a week? Why, it just doesn't make it. Sometimes, obviously, it's longer than that. Like, it doesn't
Mm.
make much sense to me. So they should give it to you day by day. And more people would test then, and that's ultimately
Yeah,
better for Amazon, right?
absolutely. So as we start kind of wrapping towards the end, what are give me two things that for 2025, the things you're 80/20, what are you going for in terms of the Amazon business? What are the two things you're focusing on and betting on for the future?
Well, we're praying that AI doesn't come along and mess this game up. I think that's the number
Yeah.
one thing. But we are focusing on fewer projects and going bigger with them. We've got a few very smart people helping us with some big launches in the US, and we're very excited about what could be possible there.
Yeah.
Hormozy talks a lot about what does he say? I'll try to find the right quote here, but it's something like it's costing you 10 million a year to not know how to make 10 million a year. So we just
Mm.
got people in that have been there, done it, recently exited for bajillions and could hold our hand essentially through a US launch because for whatever reason we've had pretty poor luck in the US. We've had like pesticide issues and a few compliance things and just things that unexpected things go wrong. So we just wanted every I dotted, crossed T crossed, and get this thing done properly. So
Mm.
that's a huge project for us. We're aiming for millions on that this year, and then for the UK, there's one niche in particular where we're already quite dominant, and now we want the whole thing. So we want every single segment of this thing and become the only brand associated with this product.
Yeah.
So that's where essentially all the focus is right now. We have a few other side projects going on, a couple of smaller brands starting up, but they have their own brand managers that have come in fresh, that know what they're doing and are experienced, and really excited about those two. But yeah, for us, it's those are the opportunities for us, and then really just imagery is now the big thing. So we had to let go, sadly, 4 of our Filipino designers. We still have 2 in the Philippines, and we've now hired a 3D artist that sits next to me at work, and that has been an absolute game changer to have someone that so quick, so on it. You can just make changes. Oh, let's move that, move this. Trying to do the
Mm.
same thing as that over, say, ClickUp thread is an absolute nightmare. So already a real game changer, and we think that this. Well, I'm positive that this one person has replaced the output of 4 because it's.
Do you know what that
Yeah, because
is?
he's just sat there with me.
Not just that, raw talent. Like
Yeah, absolutely.
if you look at developers, you can have a good developer, but a great one could be 100 times better. Like it compounds. It's like designers. Ask anyone in this community the nightmares they have to find a good designer. And then if they've got one, they love it. And then if they lose it, they're very depressed. We've had this discussion. It's like you must put them under lock and key. You hide them away. You don't let anyone know they are. They go in their bunker. It's true though, isn't it? It's like it's so hard, and a lot of it is just that raw talent. Like you can't train someone to be a great designer just through effort alone. It's not like this straight line where you go, if you put in the hours, you'd be a great designer. It's innate. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? There's something
Yeah.
about it.
I think having an eye for what's going to work as well is just some like
Yeah.
an underrated talent. A few of the team really do understand what would look good. The
Mm.
hypothesis of what's going to look good in a main image and how to test around that. We're very lucky to have a few good people like that in the team. And then, yeah, my last point is trying to keep this team together. We're very lucky to have very high retention rates in the business.
Mm.
No one's really left off their own, because they were dissatisfied or unhappy or anything
Mm.
like that. So yeah, very very lucky in that regard. But we've got a very positive sort of atmosphere of
Mm.
the business now, and I think everyone's sort of bought into the vision, which is great to
Yeah.
see. But obviously, that's the main focus.
Yeah. Let's move on to Seller Sessions, your headline in this year. You've been, how many you been to? I mean, you've done Christmas parties. You've probably done
Yeah,
most of them. 21 on.
2019 maybe I came to.
Yeah.
21 was I think
October
that was
because
the
of
one
COVID.
where I think a lot of people were talking about NFTs and stuff like that, right? I think that was
Yeah.
21.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so
That,
definitely
that
a big
lasted.
one before that. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
NFTs
yeah. Yeah, I was talking about
lasted.
that with a friend the other day. Yeah,
Yeah.
but 2019 would have been the first. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's crazy to think that I'd be on the stage this year. That is genuinely nuts, and the speed of how quickly this has come around is quite mad.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, look, the thing is, you're good at what you do, and people want to see sellers on stage. Yeah.
yeah,
We're in a world now where, and I say this respectfully, you know, I have to counter this balance, and I have to explain this to sponsors and service providers. Like that stage has to be reserved. All right, we've got Warner does runs the growth on a 30 million brand, and she works brand side. So while she's not the seller, she drives growth at brand side. So you could kind of split it off, but we have a lot of situations where, and there's some amazing service providers that do speak on stage. But I think we've got to a point where the market's got flooded with that, and a lot of sellers would prefer to see sellers on stage. So there's always kind of getting that balance. And this is going to be interesting because we've obviously changed all of the format radically, so it's going to be full on, hands on. And for you, I think this is the first kind of workshop format you've done. You've done speaking and stuff, and you've been on the pod. But
yeah,
I think it's going to be really interesting in the way that everything lays out, and we've got a lot of work that we're all going to do. But I think it's time for a change. Do you see what I mean?
yeah,
Being at a
yeah, yeah,
conference is amazing. You get the networking in, but then it's the retention. You're there and you write notes. If you don't go back to them notes, it's a bit of a struggle. And that's why I think it's important being tactile, hands-on. Everyone's working towards something. So you've got the VARC system, so it's visual, auditory, kinesthetic, you're reading. So it kind of covers and touches all those touch points, and then you'll be able just to leave and implement with the team.
yeah. I mean,
So
obviously, you sold this event out, year after year, and now we're changing it up. Props to you for taking a risk. Let's hope it pays off and
well,
people
I
find
can't.
value. I'm sure they will.
Yeah, I mean, look, since 2019, and this is unicorn stuff, it's not normal. I've sold out 11 events in a row and 5 seller sessions, but I always have the attitude is like, when you do events, it's a zero sum game. So you have to have the mindset of the challenger, because if you don't sell out, the sponsors don't come back, and nor the sellers. It's like in any events business. So you're only as good as your last event, and there isn't a safety net. If you have a product that fails, as long as you've got money in the bank, you can go again. Stuff like this, you
Mhm.
can't. So I think it's important as well. You've always got to change things up, move with the times, and find ways that are going to be more interesting and invigorating for people to attend. So yeah, this one's been a big shakedown, but ticket sales are going well. So got no complaints there, but we'll see what happens in May. I'm not going to sit there and go, blah, 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 do a big sell. Our history says itself, right? So the track record, the receipts are there. But then, I always think of it. It's like when I get into doing event mode, it's like, oh, here we go again. Do you know what I mean? And so it kind of is stressful in a different way because it's over that long. And the irony is what happens is there will be times that people go, Dan, I've got to get my tickets, got to get it sorted. And then when you sell out, they go, yeah, what, can you sort me out? It's like, well, it's sold out now. Do you know what I mean? So you get into these sets of conversations because of the lack of urgency. People go, yeah, I'll get my ticket soon. So yeah, you will go through all those different cycles, but I'm really looking forward to it. And because we all know each other, it works differently. Do you know what I mean? We're building the education from the ground up, and it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. What you got planned over the next few months now? What's the short term that you're working on at the moment?
Well, I have a few events, which is quite nice. So I've got an event in Morocco at the end of the month, and then we're off to Philippines to see the staff at the end of March. And we're sort of hotel shopping at the moment, and it's glorious. I absolutely love it when the new hotel recommendation comes through for Boracay. It's incredible. So, absolutely buzzing for that trip. So around that, I'm just trying to get this USA project off the ground. Working with another former speaker at one of your events about a project that we're going to try and do in the US too. So obviously there's a lot going on. I've never been bored in this business. I've never allowed myself to be bored. So we just press on with something new. Exciting times ahead, I guess.
Cool. What's the best way that people can reach you if they want to reach out?
LinkedIn is by far the best. So yeah, just send my own on LinkedIn.
Excellent. Guys, thank you for joining us today. Don't forget, sellersessions.com. Go grab a ticket, May 10th. There's no booking fees. You can do split payments as well. Tickets, same price as 2019. There's been no increases there. Love to see you all. Take care of yourself.